Welcome to ACS Industry Insights. I'm Andrew Johnson, CEO of ACS, and joining me today is one of the leading business minds in New South Wales, Karen Borg. Karen has held senior roles in the fast-moving consumer goods and healthcare industry over the last decade and was a member of the New South Wales Export Advisory Council. She is currently a CEO of Jobs for New South Wales, which manages the 4-year $190 million Jobs for New South Wales Fund, supporting businesses across the state. Karen, thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
To begin with, how about we just set the scene? What was it that attracted you to the Jobs for New South Wales CEO position?
Well, a number of things actually, Andrew. I mean, it was so exciting to be looking at an opportunity where you're actually starting a startup in government. And this combination of the public and the private sector being able to create jobs was something that had never been done before. I like a challenge, and I thought, okay, I'll give it a go. And I think also the nature of the board. I mean, David Thodey is the chair, which of course is, he's got a pretty great reputation, to say the least. But fundamentally what it boiled down to is there was a chance to do something that really, for the first time, a government was embracing the private sector, partnering up very actively to do something that will benefit our community. Excellent.
So given your background, are there any experiences in the past that you think have helped ready you for this particular role?
Well, I will have to say I'm a bit of a sort of challenge junkie. I love the idea of doing something that perhaps hasn't, sort of been done before, and I've thrown myself into things that others may perhaps question. I took a job, for example, in Russia selling alcohol, which certainly isn't necessarily the sort of thing that you might do sort of always, but I sort of at the time thought it was a great idea doing something in a location. I don't speak Russian, but I thought I'd give it a go. I've lived and worked in Taiwan. I ran a frozen food facility, also something that probably isn't typical for a Westerner to do, especially Chinese frozen food. But again, I mean, these are the sorts of challenges that give you a breadth of experience and give you a better understanding, not just of cultural diversity, but also for yourself as a sort of manager and as a leader. How do you actually grow? You often grow through challenge.
Nice. So yes, certainly an opportunity to lead the New South Wales economy. In your first comments, you mentioned the startup space. So why is the startup space so important for the New South Wales economy?
Look, it's so critical. We did a piece of work really around where were jobs being created, and more importantly for the future, where were ultimately those jobs of the future going to be. And what we very clearly identified was that it was really down to the startup space, which of course then filtered up, more importantly, to the scale-ups or those small to medium enterprises that are growing very quickly. Those were really, they're the job engine. So we really had to ensure that we were driving that sort of bedrock, I guess, incubation tray to ensure that we had many more startups that then subsequently grew into scale-ups.
Excellent. So we're going to focus on the startup ecosystem here in Sydney, but before I do that, one of the other objectives of Jobs for New South Wales is to take that whole of state look, and regional areas are particularly important. How will Jobs for New South Wales go about supporting our regional areas?
Well, first of all, it's part of our legislation that at least 30% of that $190 million, so nearly $60 million or more, is ultimately to be spent on regional business to actually drive job creation. So for us, it's not even simply a sort of, we'd like to do it, but we simply must do it. And we absolutely are audited for all of those outcomes that we achieve. So there's no shirking away from those KPIs. But probably more at a sort of, I think, rather than just the we must do, it's the thing that ultimately I think is needed in the New South Wales state, which is to really drive, first of all, greater economic diversity, more businesses starting up and flourishing for that matter in regional New South Wales. We have some tremendous natural assets, but we've got some fantastic more built assets in regional New South Wales. You look at intermodals in certain areas, you look at the skills that are available. And look, I think also as someone who has, good experience with the state, I was born in this state after all, the ingenuity that you see in regional New South Wales, we've got to tap into that. And I think fundamentally we'd be crazy not to drive that. And that's just, if you like, thinking about more traditional industries, but how they're evolving from agriculture to agri-tech. Looking at the tourism opportunities out of regional New South Wales. I mean, I'm a business person at heart, and I hate to see opportunities not be picked up and driven further. And so I see regional New South Wales as being just that, a wonderful area of opportunity.
Excellent. Now, part of our approach to Industry Insights is to provide the opportunity for ACS members to ask questions of you. We're going to throw to a short break. By all means, please remember to post your questions in the comment sections of YouTube and Facebook, and also use the hashtag ACS Live. We'll be back with Karen shortly.
You have to embrace technology. It's going to empower you, and it's going to be the thing that takes you to the world.
The biggest thing that's going to set apart those who will benefit most from technology is curiosity.
Mum and Dad tell me that I used to pull the washing machine apart to see how it worked. You know, that's the tinkerer, trying to figure out what the problem is, then solve it.
At the family gatherings, we would go LANing. Multiple computers are networked up and you're playing games against each other.
When I started, my idea was to build a game to check children's hearing. And that's what we've done.
I've taken something that's been something that's just fun and study from home, and now I'm working in the IT industry. That wasn't something that was planned at all.
Talking to some people in the industry, I found out that if I really wanted to do this, then I actually could as a career.
I have a small company, but I can take my product to a global audience.
There's a lot of scope for you to be bold, to push forward, to be brave. There are so many people in the tech industry who really want you to be a part of it.
And diversity tends to produce great outcomes, great solutions to problems.
We come from a range of different backgrounds. Some of them are very good visual designers. Some are really good at research. I'm from a software engineering background. So together we can try and combine our skills and learn from each other.
And technology, because it's affecting us all, gives all of us opportunities.
I do like to change and do new things, and that's what I love about the IT industry. The job that you're going to be doing in 10 or 15 years' time doesn't exist right now.
It's pretty much, if you can imagine it, you can make that job happen.
Take your idea and run with it.
Jump in. You have to start.
Technology will empower the ideas that will change the world.
Welcome back to ACS Industry Insights. We're with Karen Borg, CEO of New South Wales, Jobs for New South Wales. Don't forget to send in your questions on Facebook and YouTube or using the hashtag ACS Live. Karen, last financial year was an incredibly big year for Jobs for New South Wales, 95 separate projects. Could you share some of those achievements that you've been most proud of?
Oh, well, first of all, I think we launched Jobs for New South Wales, so that's not a bad start, right? And with that, we actually approached the whole area of job creation very differently. So in the past, governments do tend to engage with the use of grants. That's a very familiar tool to government. You know, being a private sector, kind of public sector combination, we really sat down and sort of said, look, is that the best tool? So where we landed really was we came up with a different mix of products to something that was ever used before by government. So we have loans, loan guarantees, we have a range of different products, but fundamentally what we do is we nurture businesses along the way. And we try and make sure that their growth is exactly what we're trying to help them through, whether it's, you know, sort of the walk through the very sort of desert part of that journey of growth. But in terms of some of the areas I love to talk about, we sponsored, for example, with a loan guarantee, a business in Gundagai. It was a business in the area of actually meat processing, and already a business 2 generations in, but fundamentally seeking to expand overseas. And for us, of course, that's an area we have to continue to grow, the export sector. So we supported them with a loan guarantee of $4 million, and they're now on the way to expanding their overall capacity enormously, and of course, more importantly, hiring people. So over 80 people will get jobs in Gundagai. So that's a great outcome for us.
That is a fantastic story. So certainly having regional businesses focusing on a global customer base is a great case study for others. What has caused a lot of excitement in New South Wales is the recent announcement in July about some investment being made in Sydney. Would you care to share with us what's going on there?
I think you might be referring to the Startup Hub. Okay, so look, Andrew, I mean, for us, of course, as we sort of talking about before, startups are a critical part of our areas of focus, and nurturing them and ensuring that we really maximize the growth of those startups is very critical. So we looked overseas, looked at some other jurisdictions to see what they were doing, and one of the things that emerged was really the importance of concentrating and ultimately agglomerating startups where possible, and in the space where they will probably find their customers and the facilitators of their businesses. So we worked with the largest of the incubators here in Sydney, and subsequently we have taken a lease out on a building, and that building will have all the largest of the country's incubators under one roof. We're also looking to ensure that we work very closely with our regional partners as well. So we have a regional landing pad as well, so that when companies are looking to come into Sydney and work potentially with funders or channel partners, they've got a place to come and do just that. And there'll be a big community space as well, so for education, for training, for meets, all those great things where you have those fantastic collisions. That's going to be that for them as well. So it's a new thing, and I have to say it's been a very interesting learning curve for us all.
Oh, big kudos. It's had a lot of people very excited. If I read correctly, it's a $35 million investment. We've talked about how to get the infrastructure in place. Mm-hmm. How do you see it scaling in the future years?
Well, I think this is for us, of course, the first step in terms of actually getting that concentration happening. We see very positive things. It'll be 2,500 people in one location, all really focused on outcomes. We've got very, very clear KPIs. It's all about job generation, and as I said before, we'll be absolutely tracking it. But there are future plans to see what else could be done to facilitate the growth of those businesses, which could certainly be down the path of how we better connect with regional New South Wales. So, sort of down the path of maybe a hub and spoke model, for example. We already sponsor a number of incubators in regional New South Wales, so how do we connect them so we really get that positive engagement, and that then sort of is being nurtured along. So that's some of the future planning. And you probably know, I mean, there's been discussion about what could be done with some of the other parts of the Sydney CBD precinct that might attract some of the large technology companies as well. So we're very interested in supporting those too.
Nice. Of those 95 projects that you've invested in so far, technology is enabling many of those business models. So what are the game changers that you're seeing for New South Wales? In one of your earlier responses talked about agri-tech, but what does jobs growth look like in a digital future?
Well, there's so much talk about, and sometimes unfortunately negative talk about what the impact is of technology. But I think the reality is that what we will be seeing is the emergence of roles that at this point people can't really visualize. That's sort of one of the aspects of a future which is moving so swiftly. Now, technology ultimately is, I believe, a huge enabler. And again, I mean, sort of I think about people who, for example, are working from a remote location. Technology connects them with the world, and more importantly, allows them to trade with the world as well. And what we need, of course, here in New South Wales is to be much more engaged in what we would call the tradable sectors. So connecting is fundamentally the most critical part that technology brings. And then let's not forget the social elements as well. I mean, there are certainly, I think, a number of social enterprises that wouldn't exist were it not for technology. And utilisation where capacity isn't being maximised. We supported a business called Freight Exchange with a loan recently, run by a woman, not traditionally, sort of the gender that you see in the logistics sector. But what her business is really focused on is really tapping into so much of the containers and the trucks that are moving around this country are empty or almost empty. So what she's able to do is tap into all of that capacity, and then subsequently a bit sort of, if you like a sort of an Uber, then move that around so that you can, for example, take a truck that has just gone to Dubbo to drop something off. You now know it's empty. You happen to be in Dubbo. You want to get something back to Sydney, for example, and you're now able to access that online, and everyone's a winner, right? It's a great idea.
No, it certainly is. Taking out the inefficiencies in the supply chain has a lot of upside, so
True that.
Very nice. Another really important and sizable investment has been the $25 million in the Sydney School of Entrepreneurship. Could you just share with our viewers the purpose of that investment?
Well, I think one of the most critical things, of course, is tapping into the right skills. And we often hear that, one of the things that's, always in short supply is getting people with the right skills in. And entrepreneurship is a critical skill set. It's I think, one of the most, well, ultimately one of the supporting foundations to ensuring that our state prospers. So we had looked once again at other jurisdictions. Sweden actually was the actual example where they have the School of Entrepreneurship in Stockholm. And that's been incredibly successful. Luckily, it was being run by a gentleman who was Australian, who then decided to bring his family back to Sydney, and he's running it. So that's fantastic in terms of getting our talent back into New South Wales. But the connection for us, of course, is really to ensure that we get those people as they're coming through through the universities and through also the other TAFEs. We've got TAFE also going to the Sydney School of Entrepreneurship. And how do we then give that talent, that extra bit of awareness about entrepreneurialism, and subsequently move them potentially into their own businesses or maybe straight into our startup hub?
Very nice. I'm cognizant that I've been doing all the talking, so I'm going to throw to one of our viewer questions. And we have Mohammed. He's commented on YouTube to ask the following: how would Jobs for New South Wales help those people who are at an early stage of their career?
Well, we have a number of different products, and I think fundamentally what we're trying to do, and of course everything is available on our website, but what we try and do is really make sure that we have a product that meets individual sort of sectors of a business's evolution. So if you're at that early stage and you're coming up with that first sort of minimal viable product, that's where you're at the very beginning. We have a grant actually which is available. What we're looking for, of course, is for someone to walk us through their business plan, what they're seeking to do, and then, you know, we can generally see if what we can do is provide them with that early stage facilitation. It's about a $25,000 grant, so it's really just a starting point in the journey, but we're trying to facilitate, and then we move them through as they grow.
Not insignificant though, 25,000 for a proof of concept. That's a very strong commitment.
It is.
Second question from our viewers. We've also been asked, why should someone stay in New South Wales rather than go to Silicon Valley? Just the tough questions.
That's a good question. Well, look, I mean, I think first of all it comes down to what type of business are you seeking to build, and where do you believe that you will best be positioned? And I think that's the question for any business as it starts up. But I think, once again, going back to your question on the technology, these days most businesses can be pretty much situated in any geography. It's more about where do you believe that you will be, I guess, able to attract the appropriate resources to make your business successful. So New South Wales has a fantastic education and training environment, so there's great talent here in New South Wales, and the lifestyle is also very, very appealing. So I think the starting point is, you know, if that's what's important to you, and for most businesses it's really that part of it that's going to drive their growth, staying here is, I think, always a good idea. Silicon Valley is often referenced because of the fact that funding is very abundant in that environment. And I think the thing to note is that there's been no greater time for money to be available for funding into new enterprises than currently is available in New South Wales. What we call dry powder, lots of it. And it's both through obviously the traditional financial institutions, through the government, both federal as well as state, and certainly in the private sector. So we've done a lot of work, but I would say, you know, people should think about staying here before they get on that plane. And ultimately, I think they have to think about, you know, is this truly the customer environment that I'm seeking, or am I seeking a global customer environment? In which case, you can certainly service them here out of New South Wales.
Excellent. I'm sure we've been warming our viewers up. We're just going to throw to another short break. Please remember, use the comments section on YouTube and Facebook, and using the hashtag ACS Live, and we'll provide ACS members with more opportunities to ask questions of Karen after this break.
A little idea can create a big world.
I was kind of in the middle of nowhere, I guess, kind of wondering where I wanted to be.
We looked for opportunities to engage with outside experiences.
Went to a little course one day, learned how to animate a little stick figure, came home and showed all of my kids, but Max was the one that kind of took to it, and a couple of weeks later I happened to walk by. He'd taken that stick figure to a whole other level.
I used animation for 5 minutes and already wanted it to be my job.
One of those was the ACS Big Day In.
I thought it was great. The first idea that maybe what I did in my recreational time could be something I did in the future where I worked.
I was immediately hooked. I really want to do that.
I was blown away by how much he had learned and how much he'd taught himself. Technology's enabled him to have that vision and that passion for what he wants to do.
If you have an idea, you can create something.
He is obviously passionate about it, he's having fun, he's learning.
It was amazing. I went from having a son who didn't want to get out of bed, who didn't know what he was going to do, to this inspired, happy person who was looking forward to where he was going to be and just champing at the bit to get out there and prove to himself that he was going to do something amazing.
Working in technology allows me to do pretty much anything I want to.
To use technology, you just have to have a great imagination.
If you've got an idea, follow it. Follow your passion, because this industry really ready to embrace you and to open doors for you if you've got the courage to walk through them.
One day I'm going to run those businesses and I'm going to make it different.
As parents, we kind of help our kids along a learning path. So if our kids are learning to ride a bike, we've kind of got an idea about how we want to guide them to that point of, letting them go. And technology is no different. We need to realise that technology will be what empowers our kids, no matter which job they go into, no matter what kind of skills or academic results our kids get. Technology will be the factor that helps them in their own lives.
Technology is limitless. If you can think it, you can make it happen.
People are suddenly able to do anything that they want to do. People can do amazing things with technology. It makes their lives better.
We are back live with Karen Borg, CEO of Jobs for New South Wales, who has been giving us an outline of the bright future ahead in New South Wales. As promised, going to take a couple of questions from our audience, one from Arnold in Perth. When will the Jobs for New South Wales model be rolled out to other states?
Wow. Okay. Well, obviously we want to scale up as well, but I think we have to rethink our branding. Jobs for New South Wales and WA might not work so well. But fundamentally, this is currently a model that was created here in New South Wales. Now, if other states choose to, adopt a similar model, we're more than happy to share some of our learnings. It's always good if you can actually work together. And we have very clear outcomes. I mean, we have a fantastic result already in terms of our early stage of our build out. So yeah, look, I mean, please send over the guys from WA. We're happy to chat with them.
There you go, you've heard it. Plenty, happy to take in people from WA, just have to move to New South Wales. A question from a viewer in the US who is an ACS professional member. What is New South Wales doing to attract IT professionals living overseas?
Now, I mean, of course, the whole area of attracting people back to New South Wales, or for that matter, people who might be coming for the first time, I mean, there are obviously some visa areas that are currently being evaluated. Now, that's being handled by the Commonwealth, so fundamentally that work is being done at the federal level. But certainly there is still lots of work that can be done at the state level in terms of how to attract talent either back or into the state for the first time. And that's often being done directly through the private sector. So from a government perspective, I'd have to say, what we're trying to do is make sure that we have the appropriate comprehension of where the gaps are, and then what policy might we need to do to activate that. We either work with the Commonwealth to change maybe some of the engagement with offshore, or alternatively, whether we might be thinking about some more deliberate engagement through some of the work that we might be doing. But fundamentally, what we believe in is that we need to also grow the talent locally.
That takes me back to your Gundagai example. Are you finding that organisations, small businesses keen to participate with Jobs for New South Wales are interested in tackling export markets, or is there a trend about those who are focused domestically as opposed to ones looking to tap international markets?
Well, we have 11 sectors that we focus on, and I have to say that what I'm always looking for when it comes to any of the businesses that we engage in is, of course, their growth potential. Now, this is a great country, but fundamentally it's a small market. So the real opportunity for growing a business is to take your business into obviously a broader audience environment, which means going offshore. So what we're always looking for in the business plans is, what is your plan to actually grow your business? And an export platform is usually the most successful model for that.
Nice. Just wanted to explore a little bit the knowledge hubs that have been established under the New South Wales Innovation Agenda. Mm-hmm. What are their specific focus, and how will they be successful?
Well, the knowledge hubs were put together fundamentally to try and bring together industry, the academic environment and government to ensure that those sectors were cooperative, and more importantly that they were aware of how to optimise the outcomes in terms of the economic outcomes. And where they are at currently is that obviously they've rolled out, so there are different ones that are essentially being either invested in or engaged in, but their real output is to ensure that what they're doing is driving the combined awareness of those three sectors to ensure that we actually have a better and clearer understanding about what those three sectors need to do either cooperatively or perhaps individually to actually drive economic outcomes. I mean, research is, of course, a classic area. Often one hears that there's a lack of cooperation between the research and academic environment and the commercial environment. So just connecting those through the growth centres is already going to be a massive plus.
And are you seeing any early outcomes from that encouragement of collaboration?
Oh, look, I mean, I'd have to say at this early stage, nothing that I can say that is, sort of appointed here as an example of what they're doing, but the signs in terms of the engagement that I'm seeing, that in itself is really a huge step forward, because, there often wasn't even discussion before. So putting that together and really ensuring that there is now a really active engagement between those groups is in itself a massive step forward for the state, I think.
When I think of the Knowledge Hub area, I think big business, academia and researchers. We touched on only briefly in the early part of the segment around SMEs and the types of support that are available for them. How important is the collaboration if you're an SME in New South Wales, and what does support through Jobs for New South Wales look like?
Well, collaboration is key to anything, and I think anybody who's ever started a business knows that a lot of their early stage sort of support comes from referrals, right? So that really, to me, is the core of everything that we do. Now, working with government is, I believe, a pretty critical part of a business's development. Government is such a huge enabler, and for that matter, it can also be an aspect of challenge as well for an SME. So cooperating and partnering and comprehending how to work between the public and the private sectors, I think is an important part of the education for both parties. What we see ourselves as being is, if you like, in some instances, a bit of a concierge. And what we want to try and help businesses with is to recognise that government wants to partner with the business sector, and it wants to do it in such a way which nurtures economic growth, because economic growth leads to ultimately better outcomes for the broader community. So we want to continue to make sure that that's top of mind.
Speaking of which, economic growth is very important both from a federal perspective and also at a state perspective. Looking at afar, it seems like there's a bit of a competition, a race going on as to who can innovate faster across state and territories as well as the federal government. How do you incorporate that sort of framework and current environment into your thinking as to how you can execute on your own mission?
Well, it'd be fair to say that my board does not let me rest. They've got very clear KPIs, which I have signed up for. And they really are very much quantified. I mean, we have been given an enormous amount of money. I mean, nearly $200 million. I take that responsibility very, very seriously. And I see that as something that we need to not just nurture, but actually make sure that we can demonstrate results with. Now, we've done something quite unusual. We took what was effectively an amount of cash which mostly in the past would have been handed out in the form of grants, so non-refundable sort of financial vehicles, and we're recycling the money. So the starting point actually is, what value does the private sector even bring to something which traditionally was a government vehicle, which was non-recyclable? Well, we're recycling it, and it will be returned, so it can go into other businesses. So that's one part of, I believe, how we are changing the game a little. And I think ultimately, when it comes to the actual results that we're looking for, anytime we engage with any business, no matter big or small, our first question is always, so how many jobs are you seeking to create? And that has to be part of every conversation, because we're called Jobs for New South Wales for a reason.
Now, that's a great starting point. I'm just going to check on questions from our viewers. We have one from Tram on YouTube. The NBN is a huge topic in New South Wales. How will the improvement in internet infrastructure promote a work from home environment, and what does that mean for Jobs for New South Wales?
Well, the NBN, of course, I think very rightly, Tran, is such a critical part of the delivery of what will be even greater economic growth here in New South Wales and across the country. The fundamental belief is, of course, that it will connect more effectively, but it won't just connect, it will actually connect us to broader distribution networks globally. It will ensure that audiences are able to see what is available in this country. To me, one of the great stories is the area of the boutique distilling that we have now sort of seen a huge surge in that area. I was in Bathurst recently, and there's a great distillery there doing gin. And to see a small business like that use what will now be greater connectedness to reach a global audience and take what is really a fantastically unique product to really the world, that's where really the enabling aspect of the infrastructure of the NBN will make a difference. Now, the gentleman that runs that can continue to live and enjoy the wonderful Bathurst area, so no need to move. So I think that comes to the lifestyle part of the question that Tram was asking. You don't need to up sticks necessarily. You don't need to move to Silicon Valley.
I suspect that might be an area of strength in Australia, so good to see that one exploring and rolling out further. We have Abdul on YouTube who wants to know what government IT volunteer programs exist to benefit graduates and organisations in New South Wales.
Oh, that's a tough one, I have to say. Now, in terms of the different IT programs, I think the starting point is always looking at TAFE as a good starting point. Of course, we have the vocational and education training areas as well, so they're available too. So there are different, I think, starting points for to answer the question there. I think the fundamental is also, I'm a great believer in being very active and practical. Working with the private sector, organisations like ACS, I think are very vital in terms of connecting people to those opportunities as well.
Excellent. When we come back after a very short break, we'll be answering more of your questions and wrapping up. Don't go away. Don't forget to ask your questions through Facebook, YouTube and hashtag ACS Live.
Our next generation are preparing for jobs that do not yet exist. The possibilities are breathtaking. Using technology, our children have the ability to solve the world's big problems. Think food security, population growth, climate change, cancer. Our vision is for Australia to be a world leader in technology talent, one where every child can fulfil their potential.
Karen, one more really important question. What are your top 3 technology predictions for the next 3 to 5 years, and how will they affect policy development?
Wow, that's a great question. I think traditionally, of course, one always sort of goes to, I'm not sure what the future holds, but let me make a bit of a stab at that. So, well, and even before I go there, I have to say, look, I have young children, and for them, of course, it's very critical for them to sort of be prepared for the future of work. So for them, I'm also, I guess, addressing that question. So I think I'd start off with the impact of artificial intelligence and just the broader aspect of what AI is going to do, not just obviously in the world of work, but it will create opportunities that we never even imagined. So to me, that is just a wonderful area of technology. Virtual reality would be the second stream. I see that as also being a very critical part of ultimately how the world is changing, whether it's for the first time being able to not actually have to go to an actual outlet, but be able to have the product literally in front of you. So there's wonderful things that e-commerce obviously will benefit, I think, a little bit from that. And look, I think the final thing is just the baseline of connectivity. Connectivity for many parts of this country is still a challenge. So as we use technology to enable more and more connectivity, what will happen is I believe our communities will actually be even more tightly joined in the most positive ways possible. And through that connectivity, I think people who sometimes have found themselves, either in a remote location or even living in a metropolitan area, but for whatever reason being housebound, we're talking here about game-changing really our overall society. Australia is a very big country. New South Wales is a huge state. And I think one of the exciting things is some of the business we've supported in places as remote as Burke, where we've supported a goat abattoir. They will be able, for the first time through technology, to link to customers in locations like Russia, which is, believe it or not, they really have a liking for goat meat. And through technology, they'll be able to reach those customers. They'll be able, through the infrastructure of New South Wales, now of course there's so much investment going into roads and transport, to get their product to market a lot faster. And that's a combination of hard and soft infrastructure, and ultimately all through the technology that underpins it. So I think to me, that's an exciting future, no doubt.
Very positive themes coming through on technology as an enabler. I want to make sure that our ACS members have the chance to ask Karen a few more questions. So let me start with Elizaveta asks if your car can give some examples of successful businesses that have come out of New South Wales.
Oh, okay.
And that should have been Ken, sorry.
Okay, well, look, there are a number of successful businesses. In fact, my previous role, I was working for a company called ResMed, and ResMed is about 27 years old now, so not that old in business terms, but that's technology that was developed here in New South Wales. In fact, the physician that developed technology, because it's in the healthcare space, came out of Sydney University, and subsequently that is now a global company with a market cap of over $10 billion. So, very, very successful company in the healthcare space. But, I can speak to, for example, Cochlear, also very well known. Again, a company that's only around about sort of 25, 26 years old, but with technology that was created in really sort of this environment, and more importantly, that's been commercialized here very successfully. And more importantly, gone global very early. So there are some great examples. I think the one that obviously people often refer to as Atlassian, because clearly very much a technology play and a very successful one at that. And of course, very recently, sort of a company that has, achieved unicorn status as well. So these are the sorts of things where I think what we're seeing is that there's no need to necessarily leave sort of the state. You can create an incredibly successful business here, have all the benefits of the lifestyle that we have here, and at the same time, sort of do something on a global scale.
That commercialisation aspect, what would have you feeling confident that we've been improving the ability to commercialise here in Australia and not to lose ideas offshore?
Yeah, look, I mean, there will still, and I think there'll always be a bit of a challenge around, sort of, have we truly optimised the commercialisation of the products and the ideas that are coming through the system? And the answer is simply, it's how much do you actually gain from sort of every single thing that you bring to market, because you won't know if some things simply just don't get there, right? So it's a difficult question to quantify. But I would say that there is slowly, I believe, coming through, whether it's organisations like ours that are focused on driving business growth here in New South Wales, the Sydney School of Entrepreneurship, as you referred to. I think our universities and also the skills development areas like TAFEs are doing tremendous work in terms of really trying to connect with a more focused approach to commercialising. And look, I think that more and more young people, I think we underestimate the generations that are coming through. They really do see that the future doesn't have to be necessarily a job that we may have traditionally sort of seen as being a one sort of employer or five employer kind of situation. They're comfortable with a degree of sort of fluidity. And we might interpret that as uncertainty. They see it as fluidity. And independence is highly valued by the generations that are coming through. They don't necessarily want to be bound. So we sometimes need to recognize that with every different generation, they have a different lens. And we have to ourselves learn to let them enjoy that new experience rather than be fearful for them, because I think they'll be just fine.
Thank you. Another question from our audience. Jeffrey asks what Jobs for New South Wales can do for older workers in the sector compared to millennials and graduates.
Great question. And as somebody who's also, so I consider myself to be an older worker. I mean, I think that really the thing is very much be open to reskilling. I think that's really the critical message. And I think what often happens is that people don't realise that there are many ways you can reskill. It's not just the traditional I must go and do a course. I mean, I myself, I've gone from the private sector to the public sector. I'm really sort of being reskilled as we speak, trying something new and different. And that opportunity to reskill and feel a little bit of discomfort as I'm learning is, I think, a critical part of no matter whether you're young or old. I think you have to be open to trying something that's going to ensure that your skill set is constantly being developed and enhanced. I have a wonderful example. In the automotive industry, they were looking at taking, obviously, through in a transition industry, how do we take some of these workers that have been on the factory floor, working, really looking at very narrow lines on a production line, working shift work. How would you repurpose people like that? Older workers, and they are now working in a casino, actually. Also a shift operator, also, of course, attention to detail, enclosed space, so I think you'd be surprised, no matter what your age, you can do lots of very different things.
Positivity and a good mindset are absolutely critical. We have a Facebook question from Simone, and Simone asks, there are many incubators are simply serviced offices. How will Jobs for New South Wales deliver more than that and keep their founders' best interests in focus?
Well, I think that's a really good question, because since taking on this role, I have to say I've learned a lot more about this space. Incubators, accelerators, activators, and of course workspaces. I mean, these are the areas where early stage businesses sort of really agglomerate. And for us, the critical role is understanding exactly what they are bringing to ensure that businesses are being nurtured. So our discussions when it comes to any of those entities is always around, okay, we need to understand exactly how you are engaging, what are you doing to support the businesses that are sitting within your particular entity and organisation, what are the programs, how are the collisions working to ensure that people are truly maximising their opportunities to grow their business, or for that matter to fail fast. So we certainly, are looking for that. We're also looking for often for success rates. So if we look at the tenants that will be going into the Startup Hub, we will of course be looking at, what are the outcomes, and we will be holding, sort of all of our tenants accountable for that. I mean, that's what happens in businesses. You're being held accountable for a bottom line, no different.
So in that sort of next 12 months to 2 years, the outcomes that you'd be expecting to see from those sorts of investments, how would you quantify those more broadly rather than business specifically?
Very much about jobs. So everything that we basically have agreed with our tenants has been around job generation. And, just as you would with any normal business, at the end of the year, we'll be sitting down and saying, show us your results, and the results will be around quantifying the jobs that have come out of the year, and that will be essentially their bottom line for us. But it's no different in the commercial sense, right? I mean, it's critical that if you're running a business that you achieve results.
We'll take one more question from our viewers, and we have Jody from Regional New South Wales, and she asks, what are the key differences between Jobs for New South Wales and other bodies in other states like LaunchVic or Advanced Queensland?
So, I mean, I can't speak too much to the sort of the differences in detail, but what I can say is that we're the only organisation that is truly focused on job outcomes. We're very much, as I said before, held accountable for those job outcomes. My sense is in the other states is that it's much more about economic development and segment growth in terms of industry segment growth. And there's part of what we do, but we're very much, let's start at the pointy end, the end that ultimately counts most, which is for people that I have a job, and then let's go into those other areas. And so we sort of in a way try and meet in the middle, but ultimately our accountability is jobs. Whereas in the other states, my sense is they're much more at the earlier stage in terms of supporting, for example, the attraction of businesses, supporting the development of an industry. We do all of those things as well, but the $200 million, $190 million that we have is very much derived on making sure that we create what is most meaningful to you and I and to the audience, which is that there are jobs for the future.
Nice. So if we were just to look at everything, all the investment in infrastructure that's been put in place, what would be one or two key things that if we could change would really make it easy for Jobs for New South Wales to really hum along?
Well, you're right. There's been a lot of investment in infrastructure. I actually think probably more than just the infrastructure, because of course that's so tangible, and to be honest, it will certainly make a huge, huge positive difference. It's actually the work that's going on around facilitating business. So some of the regulatory changes that we're seeing. So, if you look at what's happening through the Office of Small Business, if you look at what's happening, for example, through Service New South Wales, they are literally looking at taking what is some of the red tape and removing that so businesses can actually get to market faster. And I think that's really critical. I mean, these days, I think it's often not well understood. If you're trying to launch a cafe, for example, that literally, I mean, you're talking about 18 months of going through a whole lot of, paperwork, documentation, often in multiple, versions, to get tables outside, I mean, so that's quite challenging. So what we're trying to do within government is to ensure that we enable businesses to get started earlier, make it easier, and then fundamentally ensure that they're able to get people hired a lot faster.
Well done. I'd just like to say thank you. You've achieved so much in a short period of time. There's much in the way of upside to come, and we really look forward to watching the progress of Jobs for New South Wales and to see those job numbers really grow.
Thank you, Andrew.
That's all we have time for today. I wanted to say thank you to the ACS members. I'm sorry we couldn't get to all the questions, but really appreciate it for those coming through. Once again, thank you to Karen for being our special guest today on ACS Industry Insights. And I also want to thank you for joining us. You'll be able to replay the whole interview soon on acs.org.au. I'm Andrew Johnson, and we'll see you at the next ACS Industry Insights.